everyone, it's Jill Foster here for Penny Black. Thanks for joining us today as we take a peek at Penny Black's newest collection called Poetic. This video will give you a closer look at the new stamps and dies within this release, along with card and project ideas. But if you're looking for like a how-to tutorial or card making demonstration, be sure to check out our YouTube channel because it is also full of those. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin, I love Penny Black's brushstroke stamps, and I'm so thrilled to announce that there are new ones in this release. When I created my cards with these new brushstroke flowers, I was inspired by botanical prints, so I went with bold, bright colors on my flowers and then neutral, vintage, distress-styled backgrounds. This first brushstroke stamp, called Lustrous, is such a beauty. I love the soft curve of the stem and that cute bud up at the top. Oh, and before we go any further, I just wanted to mention that for each card, I've included a complete list of the Penny Black product numbers used in creating it. You'll find that in gray in the lower right-hand corner. If you want more information about those products, just pop on over to the Penny Black website or online store, and I'll link to those below, and you can search by those numbers. Just be sure when you enter the number that you do not use the dash. This next stamp, called Dancing Daisies, is truly a happy set of flowers. If you look closely as this video progresses, you'll see that I've used it on 2 other cards in addition to this one. For all of these brushstroke style floral cards, I stamped them using a stamp positioning tool. I used the Misty by My Sweet Petunia, and I colored directly onto the stamp using Tombow dual brush pens, and then stamped onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, and it was cold press watercolor paper. I worked on each color one by one. I then blended the stamped impression using a paintbrush and water. Once dry, I added details using Prismacolor pencils. It's really amazing how adding the colored pencils on top adds a realism to the images. And it's also helpful if, like me, you get carried away with blending with the water and you need to add some details back in. This card was made with the stamp Flower Lanterns. I think this stamp is really so unique, and I love those little curls on the branches. This next big leaf, called Poetic, is very versatile as it really complements the other brushstroke stamps. I used it on the first 2 cards I already showed, but it also looks really nice on its own. Here I stamped it using VersaFine ink in the colors of Spanish Moss and Olympia Green. I then added additional shading and details using Prismacolor pencils. I think this leaf would also be really awesome for fall and Thanksgiving cards. I can just imagine in gorgeous reds, oranges, and browns. To create the backgrounds on all of these cards, I used diluted gathered twigs distress re-inker as a watercolor paint and painted around the outer edge of the card, making sure not to get too close to the flowers. I then added splatters and also light background stamping using gathered twigs distress ink pad. Finally, a touch of more gathered twigs distress ink applied with an ink blending tool and a foam pad adds a finished look around the edges. Next, we have some fresh faces as part of this collection. These stamps really got my mojo flowing as I worked with them. I love the portrait face style stamps because they push me out of my comfort zone. And I encourage you, especially if you're feeling like you need something fresh, to try these stamps even if they aren't the norm for you. There's a special satisfaction as you create something that is just looking right back at you. Each girl starts to take on a life of her own as you go. For my projects, all of the elements and backgrounds were created on Canson 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. But these could easily be adapted to be done in an art journal or even on a canvas. Last year, I created a couple of videos about art journaling, which you may find helpful as you work with these stamps, and I'll be sure to link to those videos in the YouTube description box below. This first girl, Angelette, is so elegant. I love the slight turn of her head and the way her hair is flowing. One of the benefits of these stamps is that they are illustrated simply, allowing you to make them your own. You can easily add details to the face, the clothes, and the hair. For my girl, I embellished her hair and dress with our creative die Koi and stamped the background with our slapstick cling stamp Delicate and Dainty. All of my elements, from the die cuts to the background to the face, were painted with Distress-Free inkers used as watercolors, and some additional shading was added using Prismacolor pencils. I really love how this next girl, Charlotte, turned out. I think she might be my favorite. I kept her dress very simple, but there's so much you could do with it. You could paper piece it with patterned papers or stamp a pattern onto it. It's really fun to think about all of the possibilities. I embellished this project with our creative die set Playful Posies and stamped and painted her wings using our Slapstick Cling Stamp Butterfly Trio. And one tip you may want to try, I stamped all of my girls with a dark brown ink instead of a black. I used Ranger Archival ink in the color of potting soil. I think this gave the features on the faces a softer, more natural look than using a really stark black dark ink. For the next pair of girls, I followed the same techniques as I just mentioned, but I added additional floral elements to their hair by cutting small slits with an X-Acto knife and sliding my stamped flowers and die cuts right into those slits. It's amazing how much the color choices can change the look of each girl. Like I said, they really take on a life of their own as you work with them. They certainly can be used for lots of projects and not just one. On this stamp, called Isabel, just look at the difference in her look on my project compared to the one that's on the packaging up in the left-hand corner. I embellished the girl that I did here by stamping, painting, and fussy cutting flowers from our Slapstick Cling Stamp Sweet Perfume. I really enjoyed giving some of my older floral stamps and dies a fresh look by incorporating them onto these projects. And for this girl, and then one I will show you next, I also really loved how they looked with freckles. So to add those, I just used the bullet nib of my Tombow dual brush pens and just added them wherever I thought it would be fun. Next, meet Grace. I think she has a really thoughtful look. And once again, color choices and different mediums give her a whole different look each time you stamp her. If you look at the sample on the packaging, there she was painted with a very loose watercolor, and the design was kept simple without much embellishing. But on my project, which you can see here, of course, I just couldn't resist sticking in some die-cut flowers, leaves, and even some stamped and painted butterflies. And before we move on to a peek at our new creative dies, I just wanted to mention this 3x4" miniature transparent set called B. It's perfect for adding a sentiment to these girls. I haven't used it with them yet, but I'm anxious to. I did use it on my pink brushstroke flower card, and I love the mix of the manuscript word B with all of the other script options that can go with it. We have a few new dies included in this collection, and they're really versatile. They add great dimension and details to cards, and for me, that really gives them a finished look. These dies are great for borders and backgrounds, something that can be used on any style of card with any sentiment and really any time of the year. This first die is called Pop-Up Floral Corner, and it adds a lovely corner element to your design. Here I used it on 2 corners, and then I nestled my stamped panel between them. The scroll sections of the die, they cut completely through the paper, and the flora elements only partially cut, allowing you to pop them up and add dimension to the front of the card. This next set, Thank You Squares, comes with 3 dies. On my card, I used the chicken wire one, and I positioned it onto my background and ran it through my die cutting machine. Then I repositioned it next to the first cut and ran it through the die cutting machine again. I layered our sunflower stamp Sunglow over the die cut, slightly offset into the corner. But I also think it would be fun to cut several panels with this die onto the background and then add small, delicate die cut flowers onto the design, sort of sliding and weaving some of the stems into the open areas of the chicken wire. And if we're talking about versatility, then I definitely have to mention this border die set called Fine Borders. I love the delicate scrolls mixed with the leaves. And on my card, I placed the die onto the edge of my floral panel and ran it through my machine. This gave the curved border to the floral panel. I then inked the actual die cut border piece with light green ink. I could then reposition this die right into the floral panel like a puzzle piece. And I really love how this gave such a fun inlaid look to that edge on the card. And in my neck of the woods, the sun is shining and the temps are starting to warm up. And these last few products have me thinking bright and happy and definitely summertime thoughts. Aren't these little fruits and ice cream cone elements fun? I've made a card with this die set Summer Goodies, but I also think these elements would be really great for gift tags or gift card holders for summertime gifts. Who wouldn't love a gift card holder embellished with that ice cream cone along with a gift card to the local ice cream shop? I wanted to be sure to share how I created the little basket bowls for my fruit. For each bowl, I used our transparent set Spice of Life, stamping the pan image 2 times and fussy cutting it out, cutting off the handles. I layered the 2 remaining elements together, so my basket bowl, whatever you want to call it, was taller than just the one pan one was above. I then used an X-Acto knife to cut a slit in the top so that I could slide in my fruity die cuts. It was also fun to embellish the area where the 2 pans were layered together. So as you can see here, I used a scallop die and a little tiny heart. Butterflies always remind me of warm weather, and I think this creative die butterfly trio has such movement and joy all packed into just one single die. I used it on a tag, but it could definitely be used on cards or any style of project. After my butterflies were painted, I backed them with vellum. This allowed me to layer them onto my background, slightly muting some of the background color and stamping behind the butterflies. I apologize, it's kind of hard to see in the photos, but the effect is really nice in real life. Lastly, I don't know about you, but I have a ton of summer birthdays, and I think the stamp Happy Birthday will be really handy. This would also be a great stamp for someone new to stamping, as it has everything you need to make a finished looking card all within just one stamp. I painted my image and background using distress reinkers used as watercolors. There are flowers within the image, but to give my card just a little something extra, I die cut some small flowers and layered them on top with some little pearls. And as a finishing touch, I added some shadowing to the letters. I colored with a light gray Tombow dual brush pen along the right hand side of the letters and blended it slightly with water. Once dry, I used the bullet nib of the same marker to add some dots, keeping with the style of the stamp. Thank you so much for joining me as we took a peek at our newest release, Poetic. I'd really love to hear from you about which products are your favorites. Just leave us a comment and let us know. And if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on our website, blog, Facebook page, on Instagram, Twitter, shop our online store, and see lots of card making tutorials here on our YouTube channel. I've linked to all of these in the YouTube description box below. Happy stamping!